In any event, without further ado, let's bring on the one, the only, Gabe Flaten. Gabe, first of all, long time no see. How's it going, buddy?
It's going really well, guys. Thanks for having me on, and I appreciate the kind words.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been a while. It's like the first time we've had you on any show since what, 2020?
It's been a long time. Yeah, I took a long time off. Been working, student teaching, and getting my master's degree. So my time off has been, it's been busy, but lacking something that I love so much, and that's talking football with some dudes in the middle of the week. And it really, this is what I live for. So I really appreciate you guys just having me back on to talk about something that I love doing so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So, let me just ask you first right off the bat, and Nick, feel free to ask Gabe some questions of your own if you want to. So I talked about with my New York Giants how, if you told me that they were going to be 7-4 at this point in the season, I probably would have looked at you like you had three heads, admittedly. Like, that's how realistic I am with my expectations for the Giants. And quite frankly, if you had told me that they would win 7 games, I probably would have believed you because that was my exact prediction for the whole season. Now, with regards to your Minnesota Vikings, if I had told you that the Vikings would be 9-2 at this point in the season, what would your reaction have been?
I would laugh. I would laugh. I mean, I wouldn't expect 9-2. I certainly wouldn't expect that success. But I don't think I'm surprised because that initial press conference that you saw Kevin O'Connell in the offseason, he clearly had a vision for this program, this franchise, and it wasn't going to be anything less than success. So I think his leadership certainly changed everything. Kirk Cousins hasn't had a leader, a true leader. There's been multiple reports since Zimmer leaving that he was doing a lot of things to hold Cousins back. I never really liked Gary Kubiak's offensive system, but in general, having four different offensive coordinators over the course of 5 years or 4 years was not helpful for Kirk, and he needed help. I mean, he's a great player, but he needs a good system around him. Dare I say he's a system quarterback, but in this situation, I mean, he's in a great system now. You're not relying on Dalvin Cook like you used to before, and you're getting a bunch of new receivers involved. And to be honest, with the Hawkinson trade, we have the most Pro Bowlers in the whole NFL right now, in terms of the voting. So in terms of talent, the talent's there. I think now we have the leadership. So 9-2 isn't crazy, but certainly above expectation.
I mean, speaking of Kirk Cousins, winning a primetime game for the first time in what seems like an eternity. Do you see this as like a moving forward point? Like now, oh, we won a primetime game. This team is great. You see a lot of greatness for this team going forward?
Yeah, that's a big one. The primetime win and getting to see them play and win these close ones this year. The close games were always a loss last year. And for the last 2 years, we were awful in late game management. You mentioned clock management before. Our biggest problem was underneath 2 minutes. Over the last couple of years, I think Fox always loves to bring it up during the broadcast, how bad we are underneath 2 minutes. And that's because Zimmer played really aggressive with his defense. He had press coverage. He sent pressure. Now our whole philosophy is bend, don't break. So is that a philosophy for greatness? Maybe not defensively. I don't think we have a high ceiling defensively right now. I think our ceiling is where our offense takes us. So I think we're under the sort of, we're basically playing offense and defense. If we have a good defensive game, that's great. But I think our destiny falls in line with our offense and how far they're willing to take us. And that's not the traditional way to win a Super Bowl, but the Chiefs did it a few years ago, and I'm hoping the Vikings can use their offense to do the same.
Absolutely. And let's talk about Kevin O'Connell. So obviously, I'm going back to my New York Football Giants a little bit, but obviously, I am a very big advocate for Brian Dable in winning Coach of the Year. In fact, even though I didn't think the last 2 weeks were necessarily his best job, I still stand by that. However, I think you could probably make the argument that Kevin O'Connell should pretty much be in the running because, Gabe, like you said, even though the Vikings had the talent, and obviously if you ask Tom, he will tell you that the Vikings were the most improved team, which I agreed with, although I don't know that I necessarily thought they were going to win the division like he did. So I'll give him the credit where credit is due in that department. Where do you see him with regards to the Coach of the Year rankings?
I can't give it to O'Connell just because there's also Saleh with the Jets. I mean, that team is clearly his creation. I think there's some things you can't coach. Does O'Connell coach Justin Jefferson? Is he the reason why Justin Jefferson's breaking out? Probably not. So I think the ways we're winning, it's not necessarily the system as much as the talent. I think Coach of the Year he's a great leader, great coach. I love O'Connell, but there's teams like Shanahan, what he's doing with the Niners. There's teams that seem more methodical that you can clearly associate their coach. Dable, you can absolutely associate the improvement of Daniel Jones, whereas Kirk Cousins was always good. Now he just has a little bit better. You could even give more credit to the general manager, the way he drafted with Christian Darrisaw. Maybe the only reason Justin Jefferson is breaking out this year is because Kirk Cousins isn't getting sacked every 5 seconds because Christian Darrisaw is really protecting his blind side. So I think O'Connell has been extremely great, but I don't know about Coach of the Year per se.
Well, you brought up Justin Jefferson. Now, at the beginning of the year, not so great. Kind of needed to get his sea legs under him. Now, finally emerging. This team really runs around him, in my opinion. I mean, it could be different for everybody. I think he's definitely a top 5 in the receiver category. Probably actually a top 2 or 3, in my opinion. Would you agree this team is really his to run, so to speak?
I think you nailed it there, Nick. I think Justin Jefferson's the sheer talent that he has, his ability to make these 50-50 catches that Kirk Cousins is just throwing to him because he knows Justin Jefferson can catch it. I think Dalvin Cook has declined this year a little bit. He doesn't hit the hole as hard as he used to. And I think he's bouncing a lot of runs to the outside that he could really be running through the hole. Like Alexander Madison, if you watch Madison play, he hits the hole immediately and gets 5 yards. That's all we're asking. I think Dalvin Cook has taken a lot of bad runs, bad takes, but I think in general, yes. And Thielen is not the same player he used to be. He is definitely not worth what he is getting paid. So I would completely agree with you. I think this is Jefferson's team, and I'm praying to God that he does not get hurt and he continues the success.
Oh, definitely. I completely agree. Justin Jefferson is an absolute beast. And thank goodness that there is no that we avoided the alternate universe of a certain horrible team from Philadelphia. But yeah, no. So let's talk about this defensive unit. How have you been feeling about that?
I mean, like I said before, the bend don't break strategy. We have 2 high safeties the entire game. And if you watched against Dallas, if you watched against New England, these are teams that can run the ball really well with good offensive lines. We don't play well against teams that can do the little things well, like block and run the ball, the simple things. And I think the 49ers are the first team that come to mind. I would be terrified of seeing the 49ers with their offensive line. A team like the Colts, I think, would run all over the Vikings. I don't think their strategy defensively with Ed Donatel is necessarily wrong. I wouldn't say it's bad because it works and we're 9-2 and we do cause a lot of turnovers and we have a resurgence from guys like Patrick Peterson and Zadarius Smith, whose careers were sort of written off by their former organizations. So I can't say Ed Donatel's defense isn't great, but I don't think their ceiling is very high because they don't necessarily play with that much aggression. They kind of play a little complacent. So I'm not huge on the defense right now, but we do have Dalvin Tomlinson coming back, whom is an excellent run stopper. So I'm hoping he can be a big help in the interior in stopping the run.
So I want to look at the rival team, obviously, the Packers. We were discussing this a lot. Obviously, the whole Aaron Rodgers situation. And, well, when they won the first time, did you see that as kind of the turning point for the Vikings really going off to have a great season? Or do you think the Packers were just really on a steep decline? Because we see all the injuries they have. What do you think it is?
That's a really good question. I mean, which week did we beat the Packers? It was, I want to say, I can't remember off.
It was early on, right? I think
it was early in the season.
It was week 1.
It was week 1. Geez, yeah, it feels like so long ago. I can barely remember. But yeah, we definitely gained confidence from that win because O'Connell getting his first win in his first career game, that felt good. I mean, it definitely felt different. It felt weird, like to beat the Packers week 1 when they were the defending North champions. It felt odd. I wouldn't say that felt like the turning point necessarily, because maybe it did feel like, geez, this Packers team isn't the same Packers team. As a Vikings fan, you usually give respect to Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I give a lot of respect to the guy with weapons or even, a little bit of help. The guy's amazing. My initial instinct, though, Nick, was that this team is not the same. This Green Bay team is not helping Aaron Rodgers. And I have a good friend who's a Packers fan who would say the same thing, that it's not Aaron Rodgers who's to blame. It's his surrounding supporting cast. So I was skeptical for a while, to be honest. I felt like the Bills win was the first time that I felt like the Vikings, you could use the word legit to describe them.
Well, here's the thing. I am going to agree to disagree with regards to Aaron Rodgers, because in my thinking is, I mean, he took a lot of the money, made the bed. Now he's pretty much got to sleep in it. And as a result, you lost a good amount of talent.
I mean, you're $50 million in dead cap now at this point. I mean, well, it's really $90 million in dead cap, but $50 million in salary. They couldn't keep Devontae Adams. I mean, this
is why I respect Tom Brady more than Aaron Rodgers, because Tom Brady takes less money just to keep talent around.
And you could, I could agree with that. I mean, Coach LaFleur never seems to me to have a clue when I watch Matt LaFleur like coaching. He definitely seems like he defers to Aaron Rodgers to do a lot of the thinking. And I don't think he's put that team in a position to succeed offensively. I mean, he kind of just leaves it to Aaron Rodgers. That's why I give Aaron Rodgers a lot of credit, because I think he's had to do make a lot of his success on his own. And you make a good point. He did make this bed, and now he's still sleeping in it. But I do think he needed more help, schematically to work around the deficiencies. They look like they're trying to run the same offense they ran last year, which it's a great offense when you have the weapons that he had. But I think they need to go to more ground and pound. Personally, I think they should have a fullback. I think this team should be much more reliant on A.J. Dillon for rushing. I think they use him really well in that formation with the 2 running backs. But I think you could really become a ground and pound, use A.J. Dillon as Derrick Henry, and slow the clock down and keep your defense off the field, which they aren't really doing at the moment.
It's an interesting situation. I mean, the Packers are going to have a lot to assess in the offseason, the way that they're playing. And it also didn't help. They lost both games to the Vikings. That's another 2 games, if you want to think about it theoretically off the top.
We got one more to beat them, but we will beat them.
Yes, that's what I meant. Yes, they won the first one, and I think they're going to win the second one.
Easily, but yeah. The division is not good all around. It's a down year for the division. The Lions, though, they're coming alive.
I don't know. I like the Lions in the future. Well, I think they'll be more competitive sooner. But
yeah, let's just hope that Dan Campbell can be careful with his over-aggression.
Actually, Tom made a good point also in the chat that the Vikings will be the first team to clinch their division. Are you surprised how quick they're going to clinch the division?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, even in the beginning of the season, you had the Bears at 3-1, Packers were 3-1, and I think the Vikings were also 3-1. So we had a situation where I thought it was going to be, a race to the end. And I make a bet with my friend who's a Packers fan every year. I bet him like $100. Vikings going to win the division. He bets on the Packers. I've lost the last two. So third time's the charm on that one. But in general, though, it's always us or the Packers. In my lifetime, it's typically been the Vikings or the Packers winning the division. The Bears and the Lions have always been an afterthought. So they really have to prove a sustained amount of success like the Vikings and the Packers have before I really feel like these are teams that could threaten us on a consistent basis for the division.
Yeah, I mean, it's good football. It's competitive football. Do you want to talk about the matchup for this week, Hank? Or
yeah, no. Well, actually, before I do, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about your takeaways from the win on Thanksgiving against the New England Patriots.
Loved it. I mean, we gave up too many points to Mac Jones, who should not be putting up that many points on us. We needed a special teams touchdown to really win that game. That changed all the momentum. But at the end of the day, I mean, a win's a win, and we're getting these gritty wins where we have to come from behind. I think we like to play from behind more. We like to play with urgency because O'Connell has that McVay in him where he likes to play with urgency. And that high tempo is really, really great when you can throw the ball well and keep defenses on their heels. And I think we move the ball so quickly sometimes that we end up allowing a lot of possessions from the other team, which gives them more points. So I think you have to look at scores with the Vikings relative because we're going to score a lot, but we're going to give up a lot too, because that's our philosophy.
It's a good point.
Yep. Again, and like you said, they're pretty much a bend but not break team. And, another thing I want to talk to you about is, so you mentioned the San Francisco 49ers being your most feared team in the NFC. Who are the other teams that you view as a big threat?
Well, absolutely. The Eagles are still
right.
They're so talented. And those additions of Linval Joseph, former Giant and Viking, and Ndamukong Suh, those are the kind of additions that the Vikings should have been making, and we haven't. So I think they're very much a threat. In the NFC, I mean, teams that can run the ball, there's not a lot of them necessarily. So that's my fear. Teams that can ground and pound and play in a cold weather environment. Those teams who want to play dirty, they want to play aggressive. I think we're a softer sort of team, and not necessarily our personnel. I just think we use our personnel in a conservative, complacent way. I think we have very hard-hitting players, and we have some beasts on our defense. I just think we're not using them as aggressively as Zimmer used to use them. So I think I think we're third. I think we're third right now. I think it's the Eagles and the 49ers, and I think we're on the outside looking in.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that probably makes sense. I mean, I'm pretty much on record saying that the 49ers are probably...
We both were. We were both saying that the addition of CMC really brought that team over to a different level. Totally. I mean, they didn't have a running back, really. They were injured in running backs the last couple of years. But now that you have CMC, you can run downhill, and they don't have to worry about it anymore.
But anyways, I think... Gabe, Nick, do you guys want to preview the next game, since it's pretty much you guys against each other, with Gabe being the Vikings, Nick being, of course, a diehard fan of the New York Jets. So let me ask you both this question, and I would say both of you can probably give one answer for each of your teams. And I feel like I'm kind of borrowing from another show that I do. You may have heard of it. It's called Big Blue Avenue. What are your keys to victory for the Minnesota Vikings? I'm going to start with you, of course, with that question, Gabe.
I think it's going to be a very high scoring game. I think it's going to be a high scoring game. So the keys to victory, though, is don't turn the ball over. I think we have such little understanding of what Mike White brings to the table because he's only played in one game that I think he's going to have a lot of success. We might not really know a ton. And I know he played last year, but I mean, if Mike White compared to like Mac Jones and some of these middle, like Andy Dalton lit us up in London, and we got lit up by Mac Jones, and we've consistently gotten lit up by Cooper Rush in the past. So guys who have come in and you expect to just beat them because they're inferior at quarterback, that does not apply to Minnesota. We typically play down to the opposing team's quarterback. And I'm not giving any knock to Mike White. I think he's actually a really solid quarterback. So I think if we can not turn the ball over offensively and force a couple turnovers from Mike White and special teams, I mean, if we could get some big chunk kickoff returns and really play that, because I know Saleh always coaches the special teams well, and he coaches everywhere really well. I think it's going to come down to the little things, turnovers and just stuff like that. And just pure determination to win.
I mean, I'm just praying. I mean, I told Hank when we did this earlier that I thought the Bears were going to destroy the Jets. Boy, was I wrong about that one. Winning by 21. But I think the big thing is on the Jets side of things, you can't give up a special teams touchdown like you did last week against the Pats. That I swear I threw something at the wall after the way that game went. That was a couple weeks ago. But yes, like you can't have a special teams touchdown. You gotta, like you said, play the special teams well. Mike White looked great, but again, you don't know what you're going to get from him week to week. It's nice you got 300 yards, and as Hank pulled out that fun fact from earlier, that one of two quarterbacks to have 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a quarterback rating over 75. I mean, like
completion percentage.
Percentage over 75. You can't hope for that every week. The Jets got to play defense. That's how they win games. And if they don't play defense, they're going to get annihilated. We've seen it happen. They should have won the game against the Bills. They should have won the game against the Pats. They lost both.
There's teams that have like we've had some games like against Washington and the Dolphins. I think of games that I felt at the time, and that's another a couple teams where we played a backup quarterback going into those games, and we struggled. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater played for half of the game in Miami, and then they brought in the third stringer. I can't remember who it was, but we didn't dominate these games against very sub-average, subpar quarterbacks. And I think like Mike White has a receiving core. He's got guys like Andy Dalton didn't just light us up because he had nobody around him. He had Chris Olave. He has guys around him, Alvin Kamara. And you guys have that speed on the outside. We don't have a ton of speed on the outside. We're working with Patrick Peterson, who's very, very up there. And we're working with really a modge podge of just rookie corners on the other side. You guys could expose us on the outside if you try to.
The thing I'd be worried about for the Jet defense, obviously Jefferson, even though, like you said, Thielen is on a decline, you still have 2 guys there that are consistent that can catch the football. That's one thing that the Jets sometimes will struggle with, playing like a cover 2, trying to covering these 2 guys, trying to get them not catching the football. Like, it's just, I'd be worried about Jefferson. That's the one guy. I think you're going to see doubles and triples on Jefferson most of the game.
You should. Don't play cover 2. If you play cover 2, it's good. It's just going to let Kirk Cousins dictate. You have to be aggressive in I know week 1 that we talked about week 1 earlier. The Packers ran like cover 2 the whole game, and it was ridiculous because we were expecting a nice Jair Alexander, Justin Jefferson matchup, and we didn't get it. The Packers just gave him 180 yards receiving and didn't have to work for it. I don't expect you guys to be that complacent. I expect you guys to double and force us to throw to guys like Osborne and Thielen. And I think that would be my expectation, is that Jefferson probably won't win this game because he's going to be so caught up with.
Yeah, I mean, or you could go the other way. Let him get the yards and block everybody else. There's 2 ways you can go with it, really. Just don't let him score. You want him, let him have as many yards as he wants. Just don't make sure he doesn't get in the end zone. So, I don't know. I'm nervous, but I'm glad that the Jets bench Zach Wilson. It was time. They had to. People have yelled at me multiple times. What do you mean you're benching? Even Hank, you said it at times that you thought it was weird. That
I did, and I stand by what I said at the time, because generally speaking, I'm not really for benching a quarterback in year 2 of his development stage, especially when he hasn't really made that many starts. But with that being said, considering what he did in the press conference and considering that Robert Saleh was in a very tough situation where he pretty much, had to take control of the locker room, like I don't think I think the Jets did really had a choice. I think they had to bench him, and and I also warned you the risk that you're going to get a quarterback controversy. And look, even though Mike White has done great in his return, and even though maybe he's been the better QB, like the problem with the quarterback controversy, especially when you have two young ones, is you either have one quarterback or no quarterbacks. And and now basically it's going to look like Joe Douglas is essentially admitting he made a mistake when he took Zach Wilson so early. I'm sorry, but that's the risk you run. I don't mean to be that Debbie Downer, but
you're right.
That's the facts.
The one difference I will say also is that Kirk Cousins would never make that mistake on the post-game press conference, Stan. I'll tell you that right now. As much as we've gotten on him for that viral moment, which was all funny and all.
And Kirko chains.
And the Kirko chains, yes, on the airplane. Yes, but that's funny at least. Like, Zach Wilson was being serious. Like, he said he was joking, but you could clearly tell, like, he doesn't care.
Kirk Cousins that we've never had. I actually contemplated Kirk Cousins' career has only lasted this long because of how well he maintains himself, even through very average seasons we've had in his first 3 years. I mean, I thought maybe they wouldn't extend him, but I think it is that character that has kept his career really, like, he's been the guy since 2012. He's been a starter for most of his time, and he's been really consistent. So I never had to worry about that with Kirk.
Thank God. I don't know. If we could just get a consistent quarterback situation, I would take Kirk Cousins of all people in a Jets uniform.
You almost had him.
Well,
so yeah. Before we let you go, another question that I'm kind of borrowing from Big Blue Avenue. Who's a player that you would steal from the Jets? And Nick, I'm going to ask you the same question: who you'd steal from the Vikings?
Wow, that's an excellent question.
That is a good one.
Oh. Man.
Yeah, no, Tom and I, you've seen us on Big Blue Avenue. Tom and I ask that question to our opposing interviewer all the time.
Well, coming into this year, without knowing what Darisaw brought to the table, I'd probably say Mekhi Becton, just for the future.
Mekhi
Becton, yeah. But the honestly, at this point, I would go with corner Sauce Gardner. Having that corner, that lockdown corner, is something like we haven't had since Xavier Rhodes' first couple years before he became useless, before the roads closed on him. So I would say Sauce Gardner. It makes too much sense. We need a corner, like a good man-to-man corner that's young and has a future. So I'd go with him.
And it seems like Tom appears to agree with you on that statement, and I think that's a good answer. He's been an absolute lockdown player for the New York Jets. And Nick, let's turn it over to you for a Viking.
I mean, I could go master the obvious in two directions if I really wanted to.
Sure.
I mean, I could say Justin Jefferson. That would be the obvious answer. But for now, I'm actually going to say Kirk Cousins because we really need a quarterback in the worst way. I know Mike White was great for one game. What happens if he gets hurt? Where do you go next? Are you going back to Zach Wilson? I sure as hell I hope you don't. I mean, because I wouldn't trust him. I would take Kirk Cousins if I could get him. Because at least you're going to get consistency at the position. I know he's going to throw 2 or 3 picks a game. I know, because he makes those aggressive throws down the stretch. But he's going to throw for 250, 300 yards almost every game. And he'll put up at least 2 touchdowns. And that's what you need.
Yeah. You would win the Super Bowl if you had Kirk Cousins. You would be up there right now.
You'd make a deep run, at least.
Oh, absolutely.
I think if you had Kirk Cousins or Matthew Stafford in his prime as your quarterback, Nick, I would probably,
as long as he wasn't hurt, yes.
Well, I said in his prime and health.
Right.
So no, and I said the same thing, by the way, not for nothing, about the Chicago Bears in 2019 with Matt Stafford.
Yes. We all wanted Matt Stafford. When we saw Matt Stafford go to the Rams, all the NFC North teams, not named the Packers, all wanted Stafford. I mean, that was a tough loss, but Cousins has come around. His development, his improvement. If we could give a most improved quarterback award, I would give it to Cousins.
Well, anyways, Gabe, I want to thank you for taking the time to join our episode. I'm sorry that we couldn't have Tom on here to talk some football with you, but I had a lot of fun talking with you. And by the way, Gabe, fun fact, I think this is the first time that I've ever really done a show with you, believe it or not.
It definitely could be. I mean, this was a lot of fun. And I'm sure Tom was saying maybe an appearance on Big Blue Avenue when you guys face the Vikings in a few weeks. But I
don't want to speak for Tom, but I'm sure you will be more. I'm sure he would be more than happy to bring you on Big Blue Avenue, and I would probably tell you the same thing.
That's gonna be a big game. That's gonna be a big game for the Giants too. It's a big game for both teams.
It's gonna be huge. It's a must win. We got to beat some of these NFC East teams. I'm tired of losing to them. But all right, guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. And Skol Vikes.
Well said, Gabe. Always a pleasure. Great to see you again. It's been way too long. Have a good one.
You too.